Are live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our second Dune Arcana session, where we'll be learning how to do on-chain data analytics with current trends in the Web3 world. So today, we'll be talking about BendDAO Liquidity Crisis. My name's Jackie. I am Agaperste on Twitter. And with me here, I have the wonderful Boxer to help us monitor the chat. And a little bit logistic today, we might have the BendDAO team joining us at the very end to answer any questions that you have. Very much looking forward to that part. So I might be teaching a fish how to swim. So any questions you have, you can ask them at the end. Let me share my screen and let's get to it. All right. Let me quickly do this. All right, so BendDAO Liquidity Crisis. About 2 weeks ago, right, another big crisis started circulating on crypto Twitter. Something blue chip, NFT, Bored Apes, something BendDAO Liquidity Crisis. So we started seeing tweets like this where people are talking about serious peril of liquidation, biggest risk to the NFT market. BendDAO and Bored Ape Yacht Club loan liquidation can nuke the entire NFT market. BendDAO has run out of ETH and lenders cannot pull their money out. And also Pentagon, Hexagon, Octagon, your money gone. So I see these tweets and I'm just like, wow, like I'm scared, but I'm also confused at the same time. So today we're going to talk about, what is BendDAO and why it exists, and the liquidity crisis, what is that, and what happened with BendDAO's liquidity crisis, and then finally cover some factors that helped to avert this crisis. So first, let's talk about what's BendDAO. Let's take a step back. So NFTs, especially the blue chip NFTs like Bored Apes and Mutant Apes and Doodles, right? They are pretty valuable, but they're also highly illiquid. So think about a house that you just bought. It's very nice. You love it. It's very expensive, but you want to do something with it, but you can't. So you don't want to sell your house because you just bought it, right? But you want to be able to get the liquidity from this very valuable thing and do more about it. So basically, BendDAO would allow you to do this. So BendDAO is a peer-to-pool lending solution. So meaning on one side of the equation, we have the blue chip NFT holders, and they will deposit. They will basically deposit their NFTs into BendDAO as a collateral, and in turn they will borrow ETH, and then they will pay back the ETH with interest. So on the other side, you have the liquidity providers where they will deposit their ETH into this pool, and then in turn they will get rewarded and earn some interest. So in a nutshell, like a very simplified version, this is what BendDAO does. BendDAO is a liquidity solution for the blue chip NFT holders. And you might have heard other competitors such as NFTFi, who does more like a peer-to-peer lending solution for NFTs. And recently, we've also seen pseudo-swaps. But yeah, so let's just to understand BendDAO a bit more. And let's walk through an example. All right, so let's say that I have a Bored Ape. I do not, but I dream about having one. So let's say I have a Bored Ape, and currently the floor price is 100 ETH, right? And even though that these are blue chip NFTs, they are actually quite volatile, and we can see that through Dune Analytics dashboard. So C-Launch team here has very nicely put together a kind of a chart of the NFT floor price, the median price, and the volume for us. So we can see, take an example, we can see the volume fluctuates, and we can also see that the blue line here, the blue line chart here, is the 10th percentile of the price, which approximates to the floor price. So we can see that it actuates quite a lot. Similar for CryptoPunks, you see the drops, and then the Mutant Ape. So you kind of get the idea that these blue chip NFTs, while they're blue chip, they're still quite volatile. So you can't really treat them as your house. Okay, so I have one, and now I need liquidity, like we previously talked about. I don't want to sell it, but I need liquidity. Potentially, I want to flip more, monkeys to make more money. And actually, you probably see this guy around already. So his name is literally Franklin 68th, and he talks about how he utilizes BendDAO to kind of like keep flipping and like make more money. So yeah, let's say I want to like imitate his strategy and do similar things. So then I come to BendDAO and I want to borrow some money, and then I check the terms and conditions. So BendDAO has this risk parameter. So in one of them is called loan to value or collateral ratio. So here we see that for the Bored Ape collection, it is 40%. So what does that mean? Meaning that like the floor price right now is 100 ETH, supposedly, and then I can borrow up to 40% of 100 ETH, which is 40 ETH in this case. So I check the parameters and okay, I decide to borrow 40 ETH. All right, awesome. And then next, once I borrow it, I know that I need to pay back the 40 ETH with some interest, right? So that's something that I know. And another thing that I need to monitor is the health factor of this loan that I took out. So a health factor, the equation for that is the floor price of the collection times the liquidity threshold. This is another risk parameter that is set by BendDAO, and then divided by the debt with the interest. Okay, so what does that mean for us in this scenario? So the floor price currently, supposedly, for Bored Ape is 100, and then the liquidation threshold is 90%. We can check on this other side. I'm going to switch back to the documentation. You can actually see, okay, currently it's actually at 85%. But while we were going through a liquidity crisis, so previously it was actually 90%. So we're going to just use that as an example. And then I borrowed 40 ETH. As the principal debts that I have, so 40 ETH. And then the interest, let's say the interest at the time was 25%, so times 1 plus 25%. So using this equation, I calculate that my health factor currently is 1.8. All right, so what exactly does that mean? We can go into their documentation and take a look. So health factors, as we can see here, there's different levels, but if it's below 1.0, then it's like you're in danger territory. Why is that? Because it says when the health factor in an NFT is below 1, anyone can trigger a liquidation in terms of an NFT auction. So that's kind of like when you cannot pay the loan, the mortgage on your house, and then the bank decide to foreclose your house. It's kind of like that. So yeah, so I definitely do not want my health factor to fall below 1. And we'll talk more about like exactly what the auction means a little bit later. But for now, just remember, I want my health factor to be above 1. And right now it's 1.8, so I'm quite happy. And then some time passes. And now there's a warning sign. Why is that? So the floor price of Bored Ape drops to 60 ETH, right? So as we have seen in the previous chart, like these blue chip NFTs actually are quite volatile at times. So it drops to 60 ETH and it creates a problem for me, right? So this is the health factor equation. So instead of 100, I now have 60. So mathematically speaking, like the top part of this equation goes down, then my health factor will go down already, right? And there's another thing, which is the interest rate that I'm paying back. So the borrow interest rate is actually tied to the utilization rate. And let's kind of like explain what that means. So first, let's go into their documentation. So this is a chart that the BendDAO has about how they determine the model that they use to determine the borrow rate. And the borrow rate is tied with utilization rate. Okay, so what is utilization rate? Utilization rate is the amount of money being loaned out divided by the total liquidity that they have in the pool. So it's like how much liquidity is being utilized in this ETH pool. So as the utilization goes up, you can see the borrow rate goes up drastically, right? So according to their documentation, we know this. And actually with Dune, we can see all these data happening. We can track the borrow rate throughout time and utilization throughout time with a Dune chart. So here we've written some query, and then we can track actually, it's a positive correlation between the utilization rate and borrow rate. And then we know kind of like around 2 weeks ago, right? Like August 19th, 20th, that's when like all the crazy stuff started happening, and we can actually see the utilization started like going drastically up, and then the borrow rate also went up to like over 100%. Yeah, so and why is that happening? So think about it. When we had the floor price drop for these blue chip NFTs. There is a market panic, right? And people started losing confidence, and the liquidity providers started pulling out their ETH. So remember, the utilization is the amount borrowed divided by the liquidity available. So when the bottom part, when people start pulling out their liquidities, right, the utilization will jack up, but also the interest rate will jack up. So like this just creates like an unhealthy cycle for BendDAO in this instance. And we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, so for now, we understand, coming back to the floor price drop. So for in our scenario, the floor price drops to 60 ETH, and then also the interest rate goes up because of the utilization shoots up. And using the same equation, I now have a health factor dangerously close to 1. I have a 1.015 health factor. And we know that when the health factor is below 1, bad things can happen. Liquidation can be triggered. So we can go into this one more time to kind of see what is happening. So when it goes into, this liquidation stage, you have a period of time. So previously it was a 48 hours. As the loan borrower, you have 48 hours to either partially pay back your loan or completely repay, or you will choose to default. So that's as a loaner, as a borrower, that's what you have. And as liquidators, someone has to place a bid to kick off the auction process, and then they are the liquidator. They will in turn start liquidating this loan that you have. So these are the two things that can happen in liquidation. And just one more thing to mention, there is actually some requirement for the bid for these liquidators. So the first bid has to be, the price has to be greater than the total debt. And previously, when the liquidation crisis was happening, the bid also must be 95% of OpenSea floor price. So let me just repeat that. So it has to be not only greater than the total debt, but also greater than 95% of the OpenSea floor price. So as a liquidator, what you're going through in your mind is like, oh, like the upside might be like 5% if I can indeed be able to like sell this liquidated NFT. But also remember, there's like a certain period where your money is just locked. So if you place a bid, and let's say the period is like 48 hours, so basically you're locking up your bid, the money for your bid, for 48 hours. But the floor price, as we have seen, like fluctuates, so it could drop while your money is locked with BendDAO for your bid. So yeah, so that's something to keep in mind of. Going back to our example again, so I don't want to be liquidated, so I basically go find some money from under my bed, like behind the wall, and I decide to repay my loan, and I redeem Monkey. So happy scenario for me. Yes, so that is in a nutshell, like a walkthrough of what BendDAO does as an example. So now, with the knowledge of BendDAO, let's talk about what is a liquidity crisis. Okay, so liquidity crisis technically means that you don't have enough cash or assets such as cash on hand. So think about if you're a bank. I'm not saying this is what happened, but if you're a bank, you have depositors putting money in your bank, and then all of a sudden, these depositor market conditions goes down, and then they start losing confidence, and they line up in front of your bank to decide to withdraw their assets, and then you don't have the money to give it to them. So that's kind of what happened during the Great Depression, and that's kind of like a mental picture that you can have for liquidity crisis. And as for BendDAO, let's start with some visuals, and we'll like dive in with diagrams of like what triggered the liquidity crisis and what exactly happened. So let's go into this dashboard, and then let's hone in on this particular visual in front of us. So in this is a chart area graph where the blue represents the amount of available ETH in the BendDAO reserve. And as we can see, there's drastic, this is a zoomed in version between August 19th and 24th. So as we can see, drastic cliff. Okay, here cliff, here cliff. And at some point they kind of like, they basically approached zero. So there was like 0 ETH available to be borrowed and to be paid out. Okay, so that's one visual to help us understand about the liquidity crisis of BendDAO. Another visual I want us to look at is this one. Here we have the total liquidity versus the total borrowed over time since the BendDAO contract is deployed. So the green area chart represents the total liquidity that we have, that they have, and then the orange represents the total borrowed amount that they have. All right, so we always, in a healthy situation, we always want the green to be bigger than the orange because we always want more liquidity than that was loaned out, right? But as you can see, you know, it has been pretty healthy throughout, but then in the liquidity crisis about 2 weeks ago, what we are seeing actually is that the borrowed amount exceeded the total liquidity, meaning that on paper, they didn't really have enough ETH to cover the amount that's being lent out. So this is going back to the original definition, like liquidity crisis occurs when there is a lack of cash or liquid assets. So that's, you know, what's happening. So yeah, so take these two images with you mentally, and we will go into a bit more detail with a visual on kind of like understanding what was happening and why it happened that way. All right, so let's look at here. So some major parties that we should consider are the amount that was borrowed, the amount of liquidity that that they have, and also another added factor is the collateral value. So kind of like a reminder what collateral value is. When you have an NFT, kind of like a house, you are able to actually have some value with that NFT. That's why it's used as a collateral, because if you don't pay back your debt, then whoever holds that, in this case BendDAO, they can decide to auction off this NFT you have, and they can recover some. So there is a value associated with these collateralized NFTs. So that's another factor that we should keep in mind. And then also later on, liquidators are another factor that we will consider. But let's look at the happy scenarios, right? So in happy times, the total amount of liquidity, this green triangle, should always exceed the total amount being borrowed, this orange triangle, right? And that means that there's always enough money to cover the amount of debt that's being lent out. And then also this blue circle here represents the collateral value. So that's like a safety mechanism for BendDAO. So that's happy. But in the unhappy times, kind of like in the liquidity crisis that we saw, so first, the total amount of liquidity will dwindle. And it did dwindle because we talked price fell, right? People kind of like went into panic mode, and people started withdrawing their liquidity from this reserve. So the total liquidity goes down, while the total amount being borrowed not only stays the same, but also it would grow more, because as we have seen previously, the interest rate would accrue at a much higher rate than before because the utilization rate goes up, right? So we have the situation where there's more being borrowed. The debt is more than the total liquidity, not a good thing, but also because the very fact that triggered this means that the collateral value also goes down, right? Because the floor price goes down, so the value associated with these collateral also dwindles, it shrinks a little bit. So that's what you have on hand. But what was worse for a few days for BendDAO was that they were kind of counting on the auction to work. They were counting that the liquidators will start placing bid to help them recover the value, but they were stuck with these bad debt because nobody was placing a bid, right? So then they in turn started like examining what was happening to start like incentivize people to start liquidating more or to put in more liquidity, which we'll cover at part 3. But basically at this point, the liquidators didn't have enough incentive to liquidate these bad debts. So like so they were in danger of being stuck with, I believe they call it floating bad debt. Yeah, so that was what was happening with BendDAO liquidity crisis and like what really triggered it. So now let's get to the part where coming back to here, right? So being on-chain data analyst, we want to be able to also do this ourselves for either BendDAO now or like for any future protocols that's similar. We want to be able to track the available ETH so today we'll build this query together and like construct this graph together. So let's start a new query. Let me go to 0. Close a few windows. Okay, so I'm gonna start a new query. Arrive at the query building part. So here I'm gonna select V2 because it's powerful, so why not? All right, cool, awesome. Gonna do this. All right, so what we're gonna do is track the inflow and the outflow of the money. So whenever we want to track the inflow and outflow of money, we, especially like ERC20 in this case, we can look at this table called ERC20 event transfer. And just like a bit back up if you don't know what ERC20 is. So in general, there are like two token standards that you should know: ERC20 and ERC721. ERC20 is for fungible tokens. So all the coins that you think about, they belong to the ERC20 group. And then ERC721 is for non-fungible tokens. So all the NFTs, so all these monkeys, doodles that you see out in the market. And there's actually a standard of how you should implement these contracts. And if you want to know more, you can go to Open Zeppelin. So you can just search Open Zeppelin and then ERC20, and then you can just read more about, what are the functions that a ERC20 should call and what are the event that it should emit. But yeah, so for now, we will actually just do ERC20 event transfer. We'll just track this. All right, cool. So it has like a few different chains. So I'm just going to select the Ethereum chain because BendDAO is on the Ethereum chain. All right, so we are going to, we are interested in the inflow of the money. So, I always just love the select farm part, get it set up. Okay, so in order to get the flow, what do we need to do? We need to understand how the money actually flows. BendDAO actually has quite an awesome documentation. So if you search for BendDAO docs, and then you can actually go into their device, you can read more about it. But for now, I'm just gonna use like a quick visual to help us understand like what was going on in all these contracts so we can track it. Okay, so let's go into this board. I will close these two for now. All right, cool. So we want to know the inflow, which is the deposit function and event, right? So when that happens, we are, let me see if I have a pen that I can draw. Okay, cool. So as a depositor, I deposit my ETH into the WETH gateway contract, and then the wrapped ETH will then get sent to the Bend WETH. Okay, so why do we need to do this? Native token of Ethereum chain, right? So in order to do any action, we need to wrap it into wrapped ETH or WETH. And then for BendDAO specifically, the way BendDAO can kind of like keep accounting of like the interest that's accumulating and stuff, it converts it into like a token. So it converts the Bend WETH into a it converts the WETH into a Bend WETH. So what's happening, and this is the part that we are tracking for our inflow. Okay, so now we just need to know the contract address for WETH particularly and Bend WETH. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's first go to Ethereum, Etherscan, and then we can, I believe you can just search for, so wrapped Ether is super searchable, so you can just do that. I'm copying the address of this. So then going back to my queries, so I'm going to filter where, and let's see. So let's see this contract address, because we saw on this other part here, right? So it's like WETH and Bend WETH. So here, contract address equals to lower, because we need to lowercase the contract address here. So this is okay. So another thing is it's sending to Bend WETH, right? So 2 equals to lower. So we need to find that. And let's see if we can find Bend interest variable. And I might not be able to find it, which is the part I will just resort to the documentation. Let's see. So Bend tokens, do I have it here? Nope. So let me go to one of their contract and just take something. So I'll go contract address for this, and I will just take a random transaction. Okay, and then I found the bend width that I have. Okay, so I have found the bend interest bearing width address. So I will copy that part. And then I will go back this part and so this is bend width. Okay, and also something to just help us speed up the query is to filter by the event block time. So here, my filter basically, okay, I can check for the bend width. So whenever the goes live, right, then I can start tracking. So I can like drastically reduce the amount of the block that I'm like looking at. So I believe somewhere, let me go to the contract address. So go into the contract for bend interest bearing width. So I go to the internal transactions tab and I can see that there's like a contract creation being done on the 19th of March. So that's what I'm going to filter for. Care anything like any event transfer happened beforehand because bend width was not even live. So I will do that. So the event block time is greater than or equal to 2022-03-19. So this is when bend width was contract was deployed. All right, cool. Awesome. So next part, I will just grab what I will need. So first I want to, because I'm trying to build something that is accumulating through time, right? Like it's throughout the time span. So we definitely need to grab this event block time column. And for now, I think I'm just gonna do the minute. So I don't care about second, that's too granular for me right now. So I will truncate to the minute. So this effectively will take that timestamp and truncate it to like every minute. And then I'm gonna call this as day for now. And then also I care about the value. So the value is what's being transferred, right? And then we know this is kind of like ETH based, and we know the decimal is 18 decimals. But if you don't know, I believe you can just look it up. Yeah, you can just like on Etherscan, you can look it up. Yeah, I actually lost the other one, I think. Let's see, we can quickly go back to, yeah. So you can see that the decimal is 18th. And also on Dune, there's like a token table you can query for, and it will tell you how many decimal this token belongs to. So there's quite a lot of ways you can find out the decimal associated with this particular token. So for now, we know it's 18th, 18 decimals. So we're just gonna divide it by 1e18. And this is all because there's no such thing as like decimal in blockchain. So in order to represent decimal, you have to just make it like a really, really big number. So yeah, so this is what I want. But because I was saying that like, every millisecond might be too granular for me and I want it to be every minute. So I want to sum up the inflow for every minute. So I'm gonna apply a sum function, and then I'm just gonna call this column amount. All right, so, and then at the very end, I will do a group by. So group by one just means that it is grouping the whatever value here by the first column. Okay, so let's run this quickly. So effectively, this part, I am tracking the inflow of the amount of ETH. So here, bend width that they have every minute that's available, basically. So now we've got the inflow, right? We care about the outflow, which is why we can get to the net flow part. So going back to our visual. So when we have an outflow is when someone decides to withdraw money. So when a user decides to withdraw money, it would send its bend width back to the width gateway, right? And then in turn, the width will also trigger something where it's like sending from the bend width. So this is the part that we're really caring about in our query tracking. So we know it's still the WETH contract as the address, and we know instead of the to, like last time up here, we care about the from. Okay, so that's pretty easy. We already have the query mostly written, so we can just do this, and then we're doing outflow, right? So here, this is the, and then instead of a to, it's a from. So I'm sending from to something else. And so here you can see the from is highlighted. It's because from is a keyword. So I am applying these, how do you call it? These, not quotation, but these backstroke, this dot. So the upper left corner of my keyboard, I'm applying this to make sure that to escape the keyword basically. And then because this is an outflow of money, so previously it was positive, so we don't need to say anything, but here it is a negative flow. So I'm putting a negative sign in front of it. And then this part, let's see. So this part will track the minute by minute outflow event for my BendWETH token. And cool, so this all looks fine. So we all have negative amount, happy stuff. Okay, so now we're gonna do something called union all. So the union wall basically would help sum up. You has to, the column has to match up. So we have the column day and we have the column amount. So it will basically sum up the column, the values of these. So effectively, like each day, it will just plus this amount in the inflow and minus this amount in this this outflow, and then it will derive at the net amount. So when I do this, it is the net flow. I guess I will say net flow. Okay, so it's like minute by minute, whenever there's an event happening, a transfer event happening, whether it's in or out, that is the net for that particular minute. Okay, so now we have the inflows and outflows. But what we need to do in order to get to this part, right? Because we actually care about like cumulatively what's happening cumulatively from the time that the BendWETH comes online. What is the cumulative balance of this particular token? So in order to do that, I'm going to do a CTE clause. Okay, so here I will do with the CTE as, all right, so here this part. And then here I am going to do, so select from, okay, CTE as T, just to make it a little shorter. So T.day, so obviously we care about the day, the times here is minute. I should have actually named it minute. And then I want to know, okay, minute by minute, what was happening, the amount wise. And also this is the part I want to do a cumulative sum, right? I want to do a cumulative sum of the balance. So first I can apply the sum function, T.amount. Okay, so here we are using a Windows function. Okay, so a Windows function. So basically this will help us, let's see with this, right? So August 18th is 06, August 18th 1125. So essentially we want to have like a separate column where we want to see, okay, 0.5 in the first line, but then the second line will be like 11.3 plus 0.5. So that's like cumulative sum rolling up to the balance. So how we can achieve that is first we want to order by a certain order, and in this instance we want to order by the time, so the T.day for us, and then we can say rows between unbounded, preceding, and current row. So effectively the rows between unbounded preceding and current row is literally helping you aggregate until your current row what has happened. So this is the cumulative sum that we need to do, and we'll just call this eval. Yeah, so let's run this. And this is the part where it's like summing up all the individual net flow, and then we eventually get to the cumulative balance, right? So ta-da, we have that already. So we can see, okay, cumulatively, this is what's happening. And then we can even see, okay, up till September 1st, these are, what's happening. And so once we have the data results, we can create a visualization. So clicking into new visualization, and what do I want to do? I think previously we did an area chart, so let's just do that. So we can do an area chart, add visualization. So here, and so you're defining the X and Y. So the X is day, perfect. The Y, I actually want the ETH balance, perfect. And yeah, so here I have my area chart, and obviously I can go to make it a bit more. I can like type the name to be, whatever, it's more readable, available ETH. And I can even change the color and stuff, and you get the idea. And then once I'm happy with it, I should save the query. And then I will be able to add it to the dashboard. Yeah, so that's how we can get to the part of the borrow in the, sorry, that's the part where we can get to the available ETH chart. So next, in order to construct this chart, maybe let's just quickly walk through how we can get the borrow interest rate. And this part, how we can get to it is by reading the documentation, and like it has extensive documentation on, I believe I just found borrow interest rate, let's see, APR and guides. Okay, it like tells you, okay, exactly what's happening, and like on chain how you're able to get the borrow rate. So by reading the documentation, you kind of like know what contract or what table you should look for, and because Dune already decoded this table, so you can just like query nicely from them. So now, because like we already tackled the part where we are seeing the inflow and outflow of the ETH available in their reserve. So next, let's just see how we can, also get the borrow rate throughout the timeline for them. Yeah, so let's first, I will go into here. So as I mentioned, Bend is a decoded project. So here I come to the decoded project, and then I type Bend. Awesome, and then I find Bend, right? Okay, so this is the part I need to find, like what is the exact table or like contract or the method I need to query for. So I know that like I'm interacting with lending pool, because previously we saw under documentation it's lending pool. And then just going back to this side, okay, what do I need? I need some sort of like reserve data stuff. All right, so I back to my query. So let's see if I can find anything that is related to reserve data. So let's just type for that. Okay. All right, awesome. So I can see that there's an event that I can query from. So they've done an awesome job for data analyst. We can get the reserve data updated. So let's just start another query. So let's call this rate. Okay, so same thing. We're gonna grab the rate per minute as we previously have done, and then aggregate it up into a not cumulative, but like, and then like make it so that it's like throughout the day to put it together on the same chart. Okay, so first let's go into this table and see what we can query for. So from, and then I'm going to select start from Bend Ethereum, lending pool, event reserve data. Okay, awesome. And I mean, like by this point, I know that there's only WETH in this, but just to illustrate like how you can get the name of the token if you only know the address. So we can also, there's this table called token Ethereum.ERC20. So if you don't know this, you can just you can go back to the search data set one, and then you can do like, okay, token ERC20. Okay, and then you can like select Ethereum, and then you basically can get to this table. So this table, let's just quickly take a look at like the columns in this table. So this table is kind of like a lookup table where you have the address, the contract address, and the decimal previously we talked about the decimal belonging to this token and its symbol. So this is like a nice dictionary lookup that you can have. So we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do that, and then the way we can join these two is by the contract address. So we're doing the contract address of these table is equal to this one. Let's call it B, and then let's just go back to BendDAO quickly and see the available columns here. Bend, and then lending pool is the contract that I want. Lending pool is the contract, and then instead of lending pool, we were looking for reserve data, get data updated. Okay, cool. So awesome. And then here, the column that I'm looking at is reserve. So I will just do b dot reserve. So reserve is the column that records the token contract address. Okay, so what do I actually want? So first, I obviously want the event blockchain, and then we're going to do the same thing where we're truncating it to the minute. So minute, and then do this, and then just gonna be same as days. So okay, so next we're truncating. Okay, so next let's find what we need. So we need the variable borrow rate. In this case, just reading their documentation, we know that this is the field that we need to grab. So let's grab this field. However, as we were talking about previously, we are kind of like grouping things together, because instead of every timestamps like seconds, we're like grouping up 2 minutes. So we are aggregating by some sort of function. So here we're going to use the AVG function, so to get an average per that minute as the rate. And yeah, so, and then I also want to make sure that I'm looking for like I was previously saying, oops, we should query for, I'm just going to copy paste this from a separate place that we have, given that we're kind of running behind. So yeah, so we're truncating the day to be greater than March 22nd, because I was looking at someone else's query. Basically, this is the second day that BendDAO came alive, and then the logic there is like, we don't want this to be volatile, so we're starting to track the rate from the second day. But obviously, like, we can do this for whatever, like the March 19th or whatnot. But here, I'm just filtering for a time that's reasonable. And then we're gonna do a group by one, and then just because I know I'm like looking for, let's see. And then here, I will grab the rate. Let's see. Sorry. Symbol in. All right, so this should work. What's happening? Let's see. Syntax error near T. Left join on. Sorry. Third time. Really? Near. I am forgetting these things. Live query running. All right. Looks like it's running. Okay, while it's running, something else to denote, right? So these rate looks like crazy high numbers. So again, we're gonna like go back to the documentation side, and somewhere in the documentation it actually tells us that the rate is denoted by, it also has a decimal, so it's like the 29 is its decimal. So what we need to do here is to divide it by the 29th, so 1e to the 29th, and then also because we kind of want 8%, so we can times it by 100, so to get the percent. So we are going to rename this as borrow rate. All right, so now we should have a more reasonable borrow rate that aligns with what we are expecting. Yes, awesome. So now we have the rate. And then one last thing to get to this particular chart where we're having the borrow rate side by side with the balance is that we will join this two tables that we just put together. So we're gonna do a left join right on right that day. I will call this r equals to the t.day. And then let's just make it nice, order by one. And then we are going to have the borrow rate right here. So we're going to call it rate borrow rate. Awesome. All right. So once it, sorry, it probably was too small for you guys. Apologies. So once we have this, now we have both the ETH balance and the borrow rate, and there's some null there because we decided to start tracking the rates a little bit later than when the BendBeth was deployed. But effectively, you can see the borrow rate side by side. And then so one last thing that we can do here is to add the borrow rate right here, and then make this a line chart. And obviously it is like a less than one all the time, so it's going to be super small. So we're going to enable a right axis, and then we're going to do the borrow rate on the right axis. And yeah, so now we have constructed this chart where we are also able to start tracking the available ETH side by side by the borrow rate. Yeah, so that is the query that we're building together today. And lastly, before I turn it over to question and answer, let's just quickly wrap up with what happened after the crisis. So obviously by now we know that the crisis was avoided. So what factors that contributed to that? We know that floor price was a big factor, right? So the floor price actually went up, which we can also again track it with Dune data, but you can see I picked a few examples. So you can see, okay, it actually went up. Okay, awesome. So the floor price went up, and then also they've decided to implement a few proposals to help with the mechanism, the protocol mechanism. So first, they removed the limitation that the first bid has to be 95% of the floor price, right? So this effectively really helps people, like incentivize them to get like bigger profits. So they will actually go liquidate. And also what you were mentioning, when someone places a bid and try to liquidate, they lock up their money for a period of the time. So this was actually 48 hours. So now they're gradually doing it to 24 hours and even less, and like they're gradually easing it into 4 hours. That was the proposal. So currently it's down from 48 hours to 24 hours. So these are the two incentive for the liquidators, and then also they bumped up the incentive for liquidity providers. So they have a base rate plus some variable rate for whenever you provide liquidity. So they bumped up the rate to 20%. So that's another thing. And also to just make the whole like protocol healthier, they actually proposed and started lowering the liquidity threshold. So remember the health factor equation we saw earlier, the liquidity threshold was 90%, and now it's lowered to 85%, and they're going to gradually lower it to 70%. So effectively the NFTs will default earlier. So it will kind of be like less risky for the people who provide the liquidities. Yeah, so that is all from our side today about what happened with BendDAO's liquidity crisis. And now we will welcome the team to be on the stage, and they can help answer any questions that you guys have.
Let's do this.
Sure.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
First of all, my brain is exploding, and I think the chat's mind has exploded as well, because we got absolutely zero questions, which is which is a bit sad. But yeah, we have with us a Dune wizard who has done great work on BendDAO, and one of the co-founders of BendDAO. So welcome, you two guys. Very happy to be able to host you here, and kind of get your thoughts on the whole situation. Can you guys both? Okay. Yeah. There you are.
Yes. Hello, I'm Zero, and I started building the deal, I think, around the first few days when the contract was implemented, and I've known the founders for quite a few months, and I really like it. It's and the team has been fast in reacting to the so-called crisis of just a few days ago, and even before during the things was in which there was kind of crisis stress testing to the project as well. So let's get back to the Dune dashboard. So I just look at this dashboard, and I think and I think there's a lot of new practice into the project I never thought before. So I'm considering putting that the dashboard that process. I think NFT lending has like recently, and we do think that we should be looking into maybe more utility to and more recognition and more to people behind it.
Nice. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, it was absolutely mental when I saw your dashboard. I'm like, wow, this is like really nice and like a really nice angle to like really understand what is happening with like what does BendDAO does and like what is happening with BendDAO. So it was very nice to look at for your dashboard as well.
Maybe can you share some thoughts around the liquidation thresholds and the change that have been implemented now? Because like before, like it didn't seem to work too well. Like the market was losing a lot of confidence, and like how do you guys plan to kind of make this better in the future? Like any thoughts that you can share there?
Yeah, I think after this, like how does the team react to it? So what's the importance of implementing BIP9 and BIP10 and the in fact like the GPT show. So maybe like present this question.
Yeah, if he's even with us, I haven't heard him yet. Crylipto, are you with us? It doesn't really seem.
Hello. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, and so let me introduce the liquidation threshold change, right? So yeah, let me think how to introduce. Before we learned a lot of the the bonding curve from the RWA, and we built the bonding. We built the NFT backed loan protocol, but based on the RWA, the bonding curve, and the threshold before is 60. Threshold, the liquidation threshold is the 90%.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, we learned that from RV, and we know, we do not study more. But after the liquidity crisis, we got a lot of attention and feedback from the community. And one of the community member, they posted the proposal, the BIP9, and they recommend us to change the liquidity threshold lower, because the NFT asset is different from the ERC20 asset. The liquidity is totally different. And I remember that is a Monday, and we see the proposal on the forum and have an internal discussion immediately. And then we accept the suggestion from the community, and then change the threshold. We lower down the liquidation threshold. But the liquidity crisis is so suddenly, and we face the liquidation situation, liquidity situation. So initially we decided lower down the liquidation threshold from the 19 to 17 directly. But later we got extra more feedback from the community. The lower down is too fast, and that will trigger more blue chip NFT asset will be auctioned and liquidated furthermore. So we discussed again and proposed the BIP 10. So we lower down from the 90% to the 80%, but we spread it in 1 month, and every week we will lower down a little bit. So that is the situation.
Got it.
Okay.
So from your side, curious, like what you think the biggest factor that contributed to the crisis being averted this time? Because we were talking about the threshold, talking about the floor price going up, and like also the auction period, and like removing the 95% auction limit. Yeah, just curious, like on your thoughts on what is the biggest factor that contributed to crisis being averted here.
Yeah, that is a good question. And from our perspective, we think we improved some factors. First thing is initially we realized that the ETH deposit, they withdraw the ETH because they concern there is some bad debt on the BendDAO. But no one knows exactly how much the bad debt is. So we improve the UI display firstly, and display how much the debt and how much the auction on the BendDAO currently. I think that is the first thing we need. Everyone knows the DeFi is more transparent than the traditional DeFi, but not everyone know the key factor. Yeah, I think the ETH deposit they concern very much about how much the bad debt on the BendDAO. So we improve that. That is the first thing. The second thing is the auction from the auction side. Yeah, that is the lesson we learned from this liquidity crisis as well, because initially we learned the auction process from Aave. The Aave their auction is is for the ERC20, and we copy the auction process to the vendor. But when the liquidity crisis happened, and the auction participant is not easy because the barrier is high. You offer the price at least higher than the 90% file of the debt. So it will limit the auction. If it will limit the bidder offer, and we remove the barrier firstly, and then the bidder will be more easier as long as you offer the price higher than the debt itself, and the bid will be effected immediately. And that is one thing. And another thing is we shorten the liquidation protection time. The time is 48 hours, and then we sorted from the 48 hours to 24 hours. And that will improve the bid efficiency as well. So after we did this, we think we can get the trust from the ETH deposit and the liquidity from the community. And one more thing is more interesting, and another crypto fund in Asia, they stay in Singapore. They post a proposal to invest BendDAO with and guarantee 10,000 ETH as the liquidity. I think that is one more thing to help us build to got the trust from the community and the liquidity provider. So basically, it's a comprehensive process, and but we learn a lot of lessons from the liquidity crisis, and yeah, that is the basic situation.
Nice, awesome. We have a question from. I will try to display it. Have you changed your bad debt strategy after the crisis?
Yeah, that is a good question. Currently, there is a proposal discussing on the forum. You can take a look at it, and it's from the community member. It is in the proposal. A sub-DAO is proposed to process the bank debt, and the sub-DAO will introduce the extra fund from the outside at the same time, and then will guarantee 10% of the protocol income as the sub-DAO treasury. Together will take the potential bad debt, and that is maybe a good solution to process or change the bad debt strategy, and make it moving forward.
So you're basically thinking about kind of outsourcing the bad debt to a sub-DAO.
I think outsourcing is not accurate. Basically, the sub-DAO is is belong to the BendDAO as well. But it's true. We plan to introduce more liquidity provider and outside investor to help us, to take or process bad debt, because currently the protocol income is not enough to process or take the bad debt, and BendDAO, because is 100% owned by the community, and all the protocol income will be distributed to the VBend holders. So we change the bad debt strategy, including two sides. Right? One is introduce more liquidity provider or investor outside. Another side is we will reallocate the protocol income. Before we distributed all the protocol income to the VBend holders, and but after the proposal, we suggest allocate 20% of the how to say not 20%. It's about 70% of the protocol income will be distributed to the VBend, and 30% of the protocol income will be kept to the sub-DAO treasury, and for the furthermore bad debt process.
Okay, that seems like a very reasonable decision. I'm happy to hear that.
It's not easy, but luckily we fixed it.
Yeah, there's one more question here. So, do you think bank runs is an inherent problem of a pool model compared to the P2P NFT lending model? So I guess like comparing NFTFi, which is like strictly peer-to-peer, with this your model. Like, maybe you have some thoughts there.
Yeah, that is a hard question, to be honest. Basically, I agree with your opinion. The bank runs is as long as you run a bank, and you have no right to print money, right? And the bank run will be happen anyway. Yeah, we can't issue XCs, to the lenders. But I think is how to say, we focus on improve the NFT liquidity. That is our target, and that is why we build the BendDAO. The NFT market, we think they need more liquidity to launch this industry. And but anyway, BendDAO is just one participant in the NFT industry, and when the whole NFT industry they face the liquidity problem, and BendDAO will suffer from it as well. So I think you can say the bank runs is the inherent problem of the BendDAO, but the liquidity problem is not belong to BendDAO. BendDAO aims to resolve the liquidity problem, and so we need to work together to launch the NFT industry, and we improve the liquidity. So that is what I want to say. What I want to say.
Yeah, I see. I guess like the more like all of these liquidation processes and kind of like the more experience you have, the more like you can basically prevent like serious stuff from happening. So it may be good that this happened now and not when there's like way more like assets under management, because I think like the changes that you have now implemented like make it way less likely for investors to lose confidence. Because before, like you said yourself, like you just copied the Aave model, and like that doesn't really work for ERC 721. So like if I was a depositor into this like ETH pool, and like I would have been scared as well, because like that the liquidation mechanism like didn't seem too efficient. But now going forward with these like adjusted parameters of only like requiring 24 hours and kind of raising the minimum bid to 80% of the floor price, that sounds like a lot more reasonable. So I very much look forward to like the future of BendDAO. I think these are like really good adjustments.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think, what to say, if you cannot kill BendDAO, you will make BendDAO more stronger.
That's
Nice.
great.
Yeah.
We have one last question maybe, and then we can end this one. So do you think BEN token emissions are sustainable long term? When will those shut off? And what do you think the impact to borrow lend interest in the protocol will be?
Yeah, I think this question is about the token incentive, right, to the lenders. And yeah, initially the token incentive to the lender and the borrower on the BendDAO will last in 5 years. And so I think that in crypto circle, I think that is long enough. And after the incentive is finished, how to impact the borrower and lending interest? To be honest, I'm not sure, but I think in 5 years, BendDAO will help a lot. Will help a lot to the NFT industry in the liquidity improvement and the NFT asset, the value discovery. So yeah, we focus on what we are building currently. So yeah, I don't know what will happen in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like I just looked at your website, and actually the ETH deposit APR, like the like native kind of mechanism, the interest rate just for depositing is higher in ETH terms. So from the actual protocol revenue. Than it is for the BendDAO, like like how do you say like subsidization, basically, like the token emissions that you are giving to these people. So I don't know. It seems like this will go through the classic cycle of like there will be token emissions and that attracts some like liquidity mercenaries, but like over time, like I think the usefulness of this product will prove itself, and then like if there's token emissions or not, like it won't really matter. So yeah. Thanks so much for joining us. This was really insightful. Really cool to get to chat with you and get your insights on this whole saga and what you'll do going forward. Thank you, Agaperste, for the great presentation. Thank you, Zero Arrow, for the great dashboards that we certainly utilized a lot in creating this lesson.
Yes.
Really great pioneer work done on Dune here, and. Maybe I'll drop the link to the dashboard in the chat in a second, and give this man all the stars, like he deserves them. And yeah, thanks so much everyone for coming. And this is it from us. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Thank
All right,
you.
bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.